Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Football Digest. My name's Andy Dunn, Chief Sports Writer of the Daily Mirror. Today I'm joined by Steve Bates, the Chief Football Writer for the Sunday People, and David Anderson, Sports Writer with the Daily Mirror, and Simon Bird, who's the Daily Mirror's man in the North East. Morning, all. And the North East, Simon, actually, the North East is where we normally find a footballing crisis as a matter of routine. This morning, it's North London. We'll be looking into Mikel Arteta's worsening situation at the Emirates and maybe at Jose Mourinho's sort of blip over the last week. Not too many worries in the Northwest, where Liverpool, you get the feeling, are reasserting their dominance in the Premier League. Manchester United on a charge after 2 years in charge for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And City maybe not doing as badly as some people make out through to the EFL Cup semi-finals, of course, after last night. We'll also be having a look at Wolves and Nuno and his comments about Lee Mason, for which he's up before the Big Four at the FA. We'll have a look at the whole COVID situation. You know, obviously, we're all expecting tighter restrictions, how and if that will affect football going forwards. And we'll have a look, basically, at festive football and you know, the beauty of festive football, of Boxing Day football, of a couple of games in a short space of time. But Steve, myself and you were at Goodison Park on Saturday to see Arsenal beaten 2-1 by Everton. After that game, Arteta said, I don't want victims, I want fighters. And I think in Matt Dunn's piece in the Express this morning, he said, had they laid down and drawn a chalk line around the outlines of their bodies, they could not have been any more victims. So he hasn't got that. And he's in a tough spot at the moment, Arteta, Steve.
Yeah, he is. And, victims and fighters. I think if he wouldn't need fighters, he's at the wrong club, because Arsenal have no real history of that. There's certainly no real history of engaging in a relegation fight. So if they do get sucked down there for any prolonged period, you would seriously fear for their futures, because that team is not made up of gritty characters that you need in a battle. The game we saw, Andy, against Everton, there was just nothing about Arsenal. I was quite shocked. I haven't seen them live for a while, but I was quite shocked at the passive way they play the game. And yeah, they play some pretty patterns now and again. They play some passing, but it doesn't lead to anything. And, I know Arteta was lauded as the saviour when he came in, and he did have a couple of decent sort of results early on. I remember the win against Man United at the Emirates, and obviously then beat City and Chelsea to win the FA Cup. But, since then, it really has kind of crumbled, and there are so many subplots within this story involving individuals, outside of just the very fact that Arsenal are a poor team and they don't seem to have any direction, that they are in one unholy mess.
Yeah. If David, if you appoint someone though like Arteta, and essentially a novice manager, surely that indicates that you're in it for the long term. You just don't. No one expects Mikel Arteta to come along. It's not like appointing, for example, talking about Goodison Park, a Hollywood appointment like Ancelotti, where, you want him to come in and do what he's been doing all his career. Surely, if you appoint someone like Arteta, you are saying this is a long-term project.
I think you're right, Dunn, but I think the problem is that only buys you so much time, and then ultimately you just can't keep ignoring the results. And like, the results are pretty awful. Like, as you say, he won the FA Cup last season. That was great. In many respects, it was too rapid a progress because it's raised expectations for this season. But this season's just been a write-off. Was it 4 wins out of your 14 Premier League games? But I think the biggest worry for me is you look at the goals, because one thing with Arsenal, we knew they'd been flaky at the back for quite a while now, and like Gabriel's come in, he sort of half solved that. Well, not even half solved, maybe a fifth solved that problem. But up front, really, really worrying, because Aubameyang signed that big new contract. There's a lot of what was he going to do? Was he going to stay? Was he going to go? He signed the deal. Everyone thought that was great from an Arsenal point of view. And 3 goals this season? And that's a guy who gets you 22 goals last season, 22 goals the season before that. And I think that's a real worry. Lacazette's just got 3 goals. So they've got that double problem where we knew they were always weak defensively, but now they're not scoring goals. They're not digging themselves out of trouble by outscoring the opponents. And as Steve said, you look at it, you see a team that's a mess. You see a team that's lacking identity. It's going nowhere. It's drifting. you talk about Arteta and long term, you must believe in him, but it comes a point where you just suddenly think it ain't working. This is just getting worse, and you do wonder. Well, certainly looking at it from my perspective, you think this is only going to end in one way, really.
Yeah, and Simon, you also have the almost incredibly bizarre situation of this going on while they've got a 350 grand a week footballer, world class footballer, not even in the squad and as fit as a fiddle in Mesut Ozil. Odd. So I think we just lost Simon there. If you get him on.
Sorry, yeah.
There,
You'd expect Arsenal and Arteta to be exploring every single avenue, no matter what this previous fallout are, to get themselves out of it. And to have a player on that much money training on his own, not part of the whole setup, is madness. And the hierarchy at Arsenal have got there's no evidence, no backstory that Arteta can turn this round. He's facing a situation alien to him. He's probably gone through his whole playing life and his managerial life at Man City as a number 2. Winning games, but now it's back to the wall. He's got dissent and disputes allegedly in the dressing room, dissatisfaction from the fans at results, and it's that old story of becoming a number 1 in your own right, having done a very good job as a number 2, and winning games at Man City. And now you're the figurehead. You're the man who's making the tactical decisions. In Arsene Wenger's words, making 11 men unemployed on a Saturday when you don't pick them, and managing that side of things. Factions in the dressing room, egos, and when it's all down to you, that must look a very different job to being a number 2, and it's a struggle for him.
Yeah, and Sam, you mentioned there, you touched on things behind the scenes there, and we talked about contracts. I look from the outside and see, sometimes you get, never mind the Mesut Ozil situation, sometimes you get a player who is used as an example, as someone who typifies everything that's wrong with the club at the moment. And that player, to me, has become, rightly or wrongly, it's become Willian. And sort of symptomatic of how Arsenal, how badly it's been run over the last couple of years. There you have a guy who's got a contract at the age of 32 for 3 years, on a free. And it's sort of, hang on a minute, like, why wouldn't he go into a comfort zone, some sort of comfort zone, when someone's giving him a contract that will last until he's 35 years of age, and a very handsome contract at that. And that sort of typifies, Steve, I think, Arsenal's dealings, their recruitment. Let's think Nicolas Pepe. I mean, he must now be one of the worst value for money signings in recent years. The contract for Willian, the contract for David Luiz, the new contract for Cedric. These are very, I think people behind the scenes, as they do, have to take responsibility as much as Arteta himself.
Absolutely. There seems to be a kind of scattergun policy to recruitment. Willian, like you say, absolutely against Everton was just a pale shadow of the player that we all knew. And the one that we saw, to be honest, at Chelsea last season at times. In that Chelsea team, he looked really good. In this team, he looks disinterested. He looks as though he's picking up his money. He looks as though he's there for the ride. And, that is not what Arsenal need at the moment. They need leaders, and they haven't got any. That is the tragic thing about this Arsenal team. You look at Arsenal in the past, their title-winning teams, Tony Adams. I know it's always easy to look back and make comparisons and parallels. But if you look back to the leaders Arsenal have had in the past, that team is just devoid of leaders, and that's why you would fear for them in a relegation fight. But I can't think of one of their signings in recent times that has been a kind of should we say, like a Bruno Fernandes at Man United, a kind of an impact signing that has absolutely transformed the club. And Arsenal should be the type of club making those signings.
Yes.
And just mentioning Bruno Fernandes, imploded a little bit after Alex Ferguson left, and we're seeing the same kind of thing now with in the wake of Arsene Wenger. We're now on to what the second manager or third manager since Wenger came out. You wouldn't absolutely suggest that Arteta will be long in that job. There might be another change. We know obviously Max Allegri is kind of available. Dare I say it, Mauricio Pochettino? That would.
No, you didn't say it, mate.
That would really be a kind of maybe a step too far, certainly for Tottenham fans. But Arsenal fans, I think, in this current climate, they can't be choosy. If Arsenal do make a change, Arsenal cannot be choosy. They are staring down the barrel at the minute, and it's not looking good for them, I have to say. And of course, when these kind of situations kind of happen with around a swirl, a conversation, building pressure, you look at the fixtures, and of course, Arsenal's next fixture on Boxing Day is Chelsea, and that could be the real key moment for Arteta.
Well, you think, don't you? Of everything just seems to be going wrong. You think of, they're getting a lot of stick now for selling Martinez to Aston Villa, but he's having a great time at Aston Villa.
Yeah.
Arteta, for some reason, brings in the backup goalkeeper last night, and he makes an absolute howler. Nothing at the moment can seem to go right for him. Arteta has to take responsibility for that. I think we're probably all in agreement that I think it's 14 points from 14 games. They're is it too early to say they're in a relegation battle? I probably think not. What I want to talk about is that overall bottom of the table. And while we're on, for example, the EFL Cup, Simon, last night Newcastle.
Yeah.
As a distraction from, and we always talk about trophies and teams winning trophies, and that seemed, I have to confess, I didn't actually see the game, but that seemed such a disappointing performance last night.
Oh, to be fair, there's absolute uproar on Tyneside about the whole result last night. I mean, immediate calls for Steve Bruce to be sacked from key fans, social media sites, and influential fans leaders. And not surprisingly so. I mean, you look at the league situation, 18 points. They look safe. They look okay. Yeah. Callum Wilson has dug them out of a hole on several occasions. But it's the style of football, and the lack of invention, the lack of pace, creativity. The body language is bad, and it's not just one game. That wasn't a cup shock. It was actually probably most fans expected it because of what they've watched this year. Newcastle have become a team that just surrender possession, and they have 25-30% possession per game, and they don't keep the ball very well. It's a really poor show, and Steve Bruce has been there a couple of seasons now. There doesn't seem to be a system or an identity or a way of playing that fans can hang their hat on. And you ask about managers if they're performing well. Are they great? Are the players that Newcastle have got, and they've spent 100 million, they've got an 80 million pound strike force. Are they greater than the sum of the parts that Steve Bruce has got? And probably the answer to that is resoundingly no. So there's a lot of opposition to Steve Bruce, which has been brewing. It's reached a crescendo with last night's result. If you ask me whether Mike Ashley will sack him, I'm not sure. He kind of gets on well with Steve Bruce. He's had face-to-face long transfer talks with him this time last year, and that's unusual. So I think he probably is quite loyal to him. But he had his key Justin Barnes, who kind of runs the club with Lee Charnley, and his PR man at the match the other day for no particular reason. And you wonder whether they're taking the temperature and finding out what's happening. If fans were at the ground at the moment, there would be uproar, they'll be booing. Steve Bruce is lucky the stadiums are empty.
Yeah, Steve, it's good to hear, from people who actually see Newcastle week in, week out, game in, game out. Because I think, one of the things is that in the coverage of Newcastle is that you do get people who are maybe slightly detached from it, looking from the outside, saying, well, as Simon said, they've got 18 points. It looks like they probably won't get sucked into a desperate battle this season. They might still do, by the way. There's a long way to go. And look from the outside and they see Steve Bruce and they think, well, actually, he's doing okay. But that clearly isn't the case, is it, from people who have to put up with football week in, week out, game in, game out, and have done for a long time?
Absolutely, Dunny. You do get the feeling that Steve Bruce has been firefighting since the day he kind of walked into the club, really. There's always been kind of a faction that have never really truly embraced him. So that is one conversation happening at the club. But when you look at Newcastle, how many times have we been here in this situation where, Newcastle have kind of flattered to deceive, if you like, promised to kind of take another step forward, but inevitably it ends up in a step backwards. And if you look at their next three fixtures, I think they've got City, Liverpool, and Leicester. Yeah. So while we're talking about them being sort of mid-table comfort at the moment, they could easily take 0 points from those 9, and then they certainly are drifting down towards that danger zone. Yeah. So I wouldn't sort of if I was a Newcastle fan, I'd be looking at the table thinking, okay, we look okay at the moment, but those next few fixtures could mean the new year could have a very, very kind of bleak look about it.
Absolutely, I totally agree. You know, City look like they're just revving up to give someone a hammering at some stage. David, I'm really interested in what Simon said about the 25-30% of possession. And again, this is the thing that people look on and say, oh, well, he's picking up points here and there, you know, and does it really matter what style of football you play? And I'll link this now to a club that you see a lot of, Leeds United. You know, that was the discussion after they were hammered at Old Trafford. And overall, does it matter? Would Newcastle fans or fans of any club be happy for their team to be losing games but playing attractive football that the likes of Newcastle fans would go along to watch? Or are you happy if your team has 25% possession and nicks the odd win here and there and stays up?
I think everybody likes good football, but ultimately you want to see your team win, don't you? And you're right. You're bringing a very good point there about Leeds, about they'll go out and they'll boss possession and they'll create chances and all the stats look fantastic. But, you know, it's still cliche. The only statistic that matters the most is the goals one. And as you said, they're coming out too often on the wrong side of that one. And again, Sam made the point about having no fans. Can you imagine what the Leeds fans would have been like inside Old Trafford if they're witnessing their team getting hammered 6-2 by the team they hate the most? You know, and instead it's been shrugged off as, oh, didn't they play wonderful? Didn't they take part in this wonderful exhibition of football? Isn't the world a wonderful place right now? And you think, no, it's not. Leeds fans will not have enjoyed that at all. And you're right about Leeds have conceded 30 goals in their first 14 Premier League games. Sorry, 30 goals. They're on course for 100. Yes. You see 100 goals. It's just, that's not even a defence. You know, that's not even trying. So that's a major issue. And yet Bielsa's mantra is, I will not change. We will just keep playing the same way because I believe what will work. You know, his idea of defending is to deny the opposition possession by having the ball, which is fine until they turn you over and they hit you on the counter attack or a set piece. It's quite worrying in that sense. It is a real Achilles heel for Leeds, and you know, somebody needs to be one step forward and 2 steps back with them at the minute. And like, don't forget they've only won 5 of the 14 games, but because they win them in the stand like they did Newcastle 5-2, you know, was it 10 days a week ago? Everybody suddenly goes, wow, isn't that wonderful? Leeds are back, biggest win since 2003, etc., in the Premier League. Isn't Bielsa a genius? And you think, well, no, not when you've been done 6-2, 4-1, 4-1, 4-1. You know, you gotta have some sort of, like, you know, sense to it, really. But that's the way he'll be, and that's the way he'll go.
I understand what you're saying. I understand there's a balance to be had, and he probably found that balance, for example, in the win at Everton and in maybe the draw at home to Manchester City, which I think we were both at. But I do like this idea. You know, I mean, Simon, coming back to the style of play and Newcastle, I do get it. I do get the idea that, you know, if you pay your money, you turn up, you want to see your team have the football. It's why I always think that, you know, this spectre of relegation, which is to be avoided at all costs. Well, you know what? Sometimes if you go down, guess what happens? You win football matches. You have the football. Burnley go down. You know, it won, I don't know, half a dozen games in the Premier League that year, 2013, I think it was. Go down, and they get 93 points in the Championship. Look at Norwich and Bournemouth this season. Do you think their fans watching them? Okay, maybe not at the grounds, but they seem to be enjoying themselves. You know, Norwich couldn't win a game last season. They've won, I think, twice as many games this season than they won an entire last season. So Simon, I do think it matters, doesn't it, to actually see your team have the ball, particularly at home.
Yeah, I mean, it's grim just seeing 10 men behind the ball, shadows in a formation that looks tight. And they had to do it under Rafa in a way, because that was their, you know, they got promoted, then it was a survival season, then you build with the extra TV money from then on. But you know, they've got a potentially decent attacking force, upper mid-table, 9th, maybe 10th, 8th if they're lucky, kind of strike force. But there's a lot of huge contracts being handed out this season to players who came through that promotion side, the relegation promotion, Shelby, Ritchie, others who have been rewarded with, and Sam Maxim, who's a recent signing, been rewarded with massive contracts. And you do wonder whether those players have been working for those contracts to secure their futures. And then the edge comes off a little bit. And I think Bruce is deliberately giving those contracts out to get loyalty off those guys. And it's not coming back at the minute. And there's several senior players who are going to have to step up. And the body language stank yesterday. It was awful. And that's got to be. He's had COVID problems. There's a little bit of tiny excuse there. The energy levels from Isaac Hayden and people like that have dipped. Jamal Lewis had it very badly, apparently. So there is a kind of like excuse, but he's also talked about it a lot and given them that excuse in his press conferences. Yeah, and Newcastle want it. The fans want to turn up and enjoy their football, and it's that legacy of the entertainers and Keegan, which kind of always hangs over the club. That's what the recent history of the club is. That there's no history of winning trophies or anything. It's just that entertainment value. The fans don't expect to win anything. They want to turn up and have a good laugh and then go to the pub and see some goals. And it's not a demanding fan base in terms of winning trophies. They just want to be kind of entertained and have a plan.
Yeah. I'm sadly turning up and going to the pub now seem to be probably out of the question for some considerable time. But I think it's interesting. I think it's all in balance, isn't it? It's okay if you get the balance right, i.e., you can't expect to turn up and be gung-ho against the Manchester Cities of this world or the Liverpools of this world. And fans understand that. It's when you're not gung-ho against mid-table teams, against, I don't know, anyone, against the Wolves or against, or against the Leeds, for example. I think fans fully get that you can't go toe-to-toe with the likes of City, and you maybe have to be defensive. I remember Rafa Benitez got a couple of good, well, at least one good result I can recall against City by basically just putting all the men behind the ball, nicked one later on. So there's a balance to be had, and Steve, I think Leeds need to find that balance, and they clearly didn't find it at Old Trafford. To expose yourselves to a team that has now become, for better or for worse, essentially a very effective counter-attacking team. We see United now half the time not having more possession, but United just got a spot on that day, and the balance wasn't there in terms of Leeds. But do you think now it's 2 years and what's the date today? The 23rd. So it was December the 19th, I think. Solskjaer.
It was Saturday.
Took over.
Saturday anniversary.
As caretaker manager then initially, but now he's had 2 years, Steve, and he only ever seems one result away from a Ollie out hashtag, and one result away from United are back. Where does the truth lie?
Well, you've encapsulated it perfectly. That is the life of a Man United manager post Alex Ferguson. But even during his era, 2 defeats signalled the end of the world. 3 defeats, then turn the lights off and go home. And Solskjaer sometimes has been kind of lurching towards disaster, and then he's pulled himself back. He is the modern day Houdini manager in the Premier League at the moment, because whenever Man United and him need a result, he gets it. But they do seem to have struck on, you alluded to it there, Dunny, that they do seem to have struck on this style of playing. And some people might question it and say Manchester United shouldn't be a counter-attacking team. Why not? If that is your strength, why not? United have in the past at Old Trafford had 70-80% possession against teams like West Brom, lower teams who've been struggling, who've come and packed defence, and they've got a result out of it because United can't break them down. So if your strength is absolute speed, pace, enormous goal potential on the break, why not play to that? Yeah. As they did. I mean, not everybody's going to be a Leeds and come to Old Trafford and play in such an open way, because if they did, United will destroy them. I mean, and we saw last season, I think Manchester United, when they went to the Etihad, City came at them in such a way that Leeds did. United just picked them off and were a couple of goals up inside about 20 minutes. So United have that capability, and Solskjaer must be applauded for that, because he's kind of fashioned that kind of style. But you do get the feeling that the jury is still out on him, and you only have to speak to a kind of vox pop of United fans, and you will get one person or 10 people saying stick with him, he's doing a great job, and then you get 10 people saying we need him out, we're kind of not making the progress that we should be. I think that's a little harsh. I think they are making progress, but there are still things to sort out. Obviously, the Pogba problem is one of them, and I think Solskjaer has been criticised that maybe a stronger manager would not have tolerated Pogba and his agent behaving in the way they have done, and would have demanded Pogba maybe came out and sort of set the record straight. They haven't done that. They seem to pander to Pogba a little bit. I'm not quite sure why, because when he's not in the team, United still win. So it's not as though he's the Fernandes talisman of that team. He's not. But they need to sort that problem out. But longer term going forward, I know there's no appetite from Ed Woodward and the Manchester United owners to part company with him. They're going to stick with him. I think certainly this season, in a COVID season, that hit by COVID, they're going to certainly stick with him. There's no way they're going to change. But at some point, United have got to turn that potential into an actual title challenge. Is it going to be now? Is it going to be in the new year? We'll have to wait and see. But I think there is the demand at Old Trafford, as there always is, no matter what the landscape looks like at United. There's always the expectation that they have to be pressing. And this is a good moment for United now to maybe step up and let's see what they're made of.
Simon, I look at it, and Manchester United, to me, have a very good squad, exceptional squad, in fact. And, they surely are very credible title challengers, aren't they?
Well, on a good day, they're very, very good. I mean, I saw them score 3 in about 5 minutes at Newcastle, and they were absolutely devastating. And it is, like Steve said, the pace that Rashford has, Bruno Fernandes picking out his runs, they're very, very good. But on a bad day, they can be quite bad. That's coincidentally happened in the Champions League. They got 7 wins in the last 10 games. Really messed up against PSG and the Turkish team in the Champions League. Yeah. But it is a strange club to watch from the outside. And at 1 minute, you're reading of the total disaster. He's going to get the sack. And, they're out the Champions League. Pogba's kicking off, or his agent is. And then a week later, you are reading headlines, win the game in hand, and they're 2 points off Liverpool and in the title race. So whether they've got the firepower or the consistency to maintain a title challenge, like Steve said, we'll have to wait and see. I think Liverpool will eventually run away with it. But they are in the title race, and it is that club has to be in the title race. That's the bottom line for them.
Dave, I just want to ask you about a couple of little interesting squad selection, team selection dynamics there at Manchester United. De Gea or Henderson?
Well, in some respect, that sums up the problem they've got, Dunn, because it should be De Gea, because De Gea at this point should be in the prime. But the fact is, they're not. The question marks over him. So all he's obviously trying to say, ride 2 horses at once, saying, well, if I can just keep Dean Anderson sweet by saying I'm going to ease you in a little bit and give him some games, then hopefully it'll sort itself out and Dean will become my number 1 and everybody can say, well, I've given De Gea a chance. But then you have a situation like Henderson drops that clanger at Sheffield United. When he does put him in, that was only his second Premier League start, drops that clanger, gives Sheffield United a goal. And, that's a goal that's a game United could have easily dropped points in, really. It was a difficult start for them. I think ultimately it's got to be Henderson, but at the minute, Dunny, it's
I find that situation odd, I really do, only because when we spoke, when Henderson was on, when he was called up for England in ahead of the September games, and we said it's slightly odd that you've gone back, signed a new contract at Manchester United, you've just got into the England squad. Clearly, you can't be a number 2. You're not going to be in the England squad for that long if you're just a number 2 goalkeeper. And he said, I won't be. And we're like, how can you be so confident that you're going to instantly replace David De Gea? And he was, so much so that at the time, I came away and I thought, he's been told that he's going to be number 1 there. I mean, listen, I was obviously wrong, but that's what he was that confident. And now he's in a situation, I think, Henderson, where if he's not playing, he wants to be at the Euros, then, he's got to think, even as early as January, about trying to get out on loan, maybe, or something along those lines. And David, just to finish on United, Pogba, I said there was a couple of things. Pogba's the other one. I mean, does it really matter what his agent says? We seem to have this every, 6 months, and then every 6 months, pundits will be out there saying, we can't deal with this guy anymore and Pogba should be out. Does it really matter? Does it really matter what Mino Raiola says? And does the only thing that matters is that Pogba actually gets into a groove of form that we know he's capable of?
Yeah, do you know what? In some respect, it doesn't matter because he's become, in playing terms, almost a little bit of irrelevance because people like Fernandes have come in. Now, if this is Fernandes you're talking about, and Fernandes' age was coming and say, oh, Bruno wants to play for Barcelona or Bruno wants to play for Real Madrid and he wants to go in January, then I think you'd be worried as a United fan. Pogba, as you say, is becoming a bit of a relevant sideshow where, here we go again, another transfer window, Raiola's kicking off, he's not happy, he wants to leave, blah, 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 blah. We've heard it all before. So in some respects, United, you can almost see why Solskjaer's riding it because he says, well, yeah, we get this every year or every transfer window. He shouts up, then nothing happens and we get on with it. But if you're looking at a team like Manchester United, you think treat the club with respect. You can't have this fella. especially when he's not playing that well, basically having his agent every transfer window said, Paul's not very happy. He thinks it's maybe time to move on and stuff like that there. Like if you were one of his teammates in the dressing room, especially someone like a Fernandez actually doing the business, you'd say, tell you what, Paul, why don't you pull the finger out and actually do something to deserve all these big moves instead of just sitting there on your, living off the glory of France's World Cup win. And when was that again? 2018 or something? Or all those Scudettos with Juventus. When was that again? About 1934 or something like that,
Do you not think though, guys, that Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool or Pep Guardiola at Man City just wouldn't tolerate that kind of white noise going on? They wouldn't. So that again feeds into the conversation about, is Solskjaer strong enough to kind of deal with that? I don't know.
Yeah. Sorry, go to Dave.
No, you're right. You're right. And you get the feeling with Ollie that, we always give this. He's nice. He's a nice guy. Everyone likes him. We like him. The fans like him. The players like him. Woodward likes him. The Glazers like. He's not a yes man, but he doesn't rock the boat type thing. You almost see with Pogba where it's like he maybe said, well, Fergie used to give Cantona a long leash and he would do his different things, but he would always bring him back into the fold, just give him a little bit of slack. And he's maybe thinking about Pogba. All I've got to do is he sounds off like this here, but don't say anything, don't make a bad situation worse, and then eventually nothing happens. He comes back, plays well, and the situation's resolving itself. And you think, well, yes, you can do that, but ultimately, you're right, Steve. It makes you look weak as a manager because it undermines your position in the dressing room. And the players will look at that. Well, certainly, I would be looking at that and thinking, hold on a minute, this guy's kicking off every window. He's not even our best player anymore. He costs all that money. He's getting paid all those wages. And yet you're saying to me, can you try harder? Could we want to win the league this year? You think, well, sort this out. And you're right, it is almost this boil that needs Lancing, really. And you're right, the best thing for United would be just get shot of him, really, because they don't need him. They wouldn't miss him. Get the money, get rid of him, move on. Because you're right, it does not, the club doesn't reflect in a great light from the situation. It doesn't help Solskjaer's position either.
I take all that on board, Dave, but you know what I find slightly amusing is that every time Raiola comes out with this sort of stuff, everyone is queuing up in the papers. Everyone's queuing up in the papers.
So excuse me, that's my.
Is that your wake-up call?
No, it's my NHS responder alert alarm. I don't know why that suddenly went off.
We'll see.
The NHS app because my volunteer driver, you see. So
yes, I remember that. Yeah,
I switched it off. I switched it off 3 months ago.
I thought someone was coming to arrest me for my opinions. But no, what I was going to say, what I find strange about the Raiola situation is that every time he comes out with these sort of things, everyone, including probably myself and including other columnists and including pundits, are all queuing up and saying, isn't this terrible? Like, Raiola should, keep stum. Listen, as journalists, isn't it great that you ask him a question and he gives you the answer? It's sort of rather, what's the word I'm looking for? Rather ironic of us.
It's hypocritical, isn't it?
It's hypocritical of journalists saying, mate, shut up, don't speak to us. When someone blanks you ring an agent, right, I don't want to talk about that. That's terrible. He doesn't want to talk about it. And Raiola does talk about it and says, you know what? Pogba's unhappy. And by the way, United are rubbish and he's off. And we're going, oh, it's terrible. But anyway, I digress. But you also mentioned, Dave, there about the links always coming up, Barcelona, Real Madrid, whatever. Strange of one player who was linked, inadvertently linked or wouldn't, as they say, rule out a move somewhere like that in the future was Mohamed Salah this over these past few days. And that was an interesting development. And then, of course, he came off the bench to score in a hammering at Palace. All throughout the last couple of seasons, if there's one player you thought that might be attracted to a move, it might be Salah, Steve. How do you see that situation shaping up? I'm sure Liverpool won't be that concerned.
No, they won't be. But I mean, I tell you what, I wasn't totally shocked when I heard that story, if I'm being honest, because don't forget, Mo Salah has had quite a varied career. He's gone different places. He's had different experiences. Now, he's won in the last 2 or 3 seasons with Liverpool. He's won the Champions League. Mm-hmm. He's won the league. You might sort of say, what else is there left for him to do there? Okay, win another league. Yeah, that would be good. And maybe at the end of this season, when they have done that, Liverpool, Mo Salah might think, do you know what? I need a different challenge. I need a new challenge. I need a new life experience. And I don't think any Liverpool fan could actually criticise him for that. I really don't. I don't think he would fall into the category of maybe Luis Suarez or Philippe Coutinho, who both left Liverpool with kind of unfinished business, if you like, unfulfilled kind of ambitions there. Mo Salah hasn't. Mo Salah has been an absolute dream footballer for Liverpool. He's just the man that they needed at the right time to elevate them to that level where they were winning big trophies. And he's done that. And he may just think, do you know what? I've had 3-4 years at Liverpool. It's time for me to move on. And I, for one, would not kind of criticise him for that, because he's done his job at Liverpool. Nobody could ever say that. And he may want to look for a different experience.
Yeah. But Simon, from a purely footballing point of view, there's probably no better place to be than Liverpool at the moment, is there? And under Jurgen Klopp.
Footballing-wise, I don't see why he'd want to go anywhere else. And if he is considering, he's got a choice to make. Does he want to be a football tourist and a nomad in his career, or does he want to embed himself in a club and become an absolute legend for all time? Maybe he wants to go and do 2-3 years at Real Madrid, but if he stayed at Liverpool and retained the title, won another Champions League and won 4 titles in 5 years, that's right up there with like the best player they've ever had and legendary.
Yeah.
That's a choice. That's the path that he can go on now, or he can ditch it and go to a club that's quite often in turmoil. They might not even be able to afford him in Real Madrid because the crisis in Spanish football, the finances aren't great. So, footballing wise, I think it'd be daft for him to leave at this point.
Yeah, I mean, David, Simon's spot on there about how Liverpool can go on, how he can cement himself in the Hall of Fame, how and there's no reason to believe. I've thought this from day one this season. There's no reason to believe that Liverpool are not going to defend their title. There's no reason to believe that Liverpool are not going to go on and win more titles under Jurgen Klopp, whose contract runs until I think 2024. Is it? I think so. 2024. Yeah. And do you see anyone? I mean, do you see anyone? I'm not seeing anyone challenging Liverpool, but realistically, can you see anyone other than Liverpool winning the title this season?
Well, put it this way, I think it's Liverpool's to lose.
Yeah.
So, for example, we saw earlier on this season there were some strange results and they've dropped points strangely. Don't forget, it's only about 10 days ago they were awful at Fulham.
Yes.
For 60 minutes and then dug it out. So unfortunately, there is that propensity within them to maybe put a shocker in. But you're right, they're getting their old consistency back, and you can sort of see it. Like, they're not going to be like last season. They're not going to get near 100 points. They can probably win with about 90 this season. But you're right. You certainly look over the last couple of games. Tottenham was a massive, massive result for the way they played, and then that last minute winner just made it feel like last season again when they were doing that to teams like Villa and Leicester and stuff. Then you sort of, you follow that up with, you go to Crystal Palace. The goal difference hadn't been great. The reason why they hadn't been above Tottenham was because of the stuffing they took at Villa. In a stroke, they wipe out that. They've now got the best goal difference in the league. And you begin to look at it and, they're sort of like firing on all cylinders again. And then you make the point about the injuries. Yes, there's no Gomez. Yes, there's no Van Dijk. But really, apart from that, they've more or less getting everybody back, or they've certainly got the people that you'd want back in those positions. So they're getting away with it, and then suddenly you think, well, if you've got Matip and Fabinho at centre half, and then maybe like a Reece Williams, it's not really that bad, especially if you've got all those other guys around them. And you're right, you begin to look at it. You said about this team, really, if you look at that squad, should be winning titles for the next 2 or 3 years. It's not like sort of 2014 where it's a shot at the moon and it didn't quite work and it all fell apart again. The foundation's there. If anything, that team squad is even stronger than last season, because not only has it got the established stars, you chuck Jota into that mix. Don't forget about Thiago Alcantara. He hasn't been seen since the derby. He's world class. And then not only that, but he successfully added in the likes of a Curtis Jones, who's now successfully established as a first team player. Nico Williams, Reece Williams, even Kelleher, the goalkeeper situation, because Alisson gets injuries. Adrian comes in, everybody goes, oh my God, not Adrian, he can't kick, he can't play the ball at his feet. Well, do you know what? They don't need it now because they've got Kelleher, they've been grooming him, he knows what to do, and he's dipped him in. 2 clean sheets, 2 winning performers. And you think, wow, so we have got a proper backup now. So you sort of look at the team, and it's hard to see weaknesses apart from the obvious one about still no Virgil at centre half. But they can do enough to make up for that, really. And you're right, they should. If they don't win the league this season, it's because they'll have collapsed and drawn a lot of games or suddenly started losing, which certainly at the present moment is hard to see. Because you look at the title challenge. You talked about United. Yes, United can possibly do it. They're not yet consistently good enough, so they won't City still seem to be in that strange transition phase where you're not quite sure where they are with it all. They'll still win trophies, probably win another League Cup, for example. But will they really pip Liverpool? I'm not quite sure. Chelsea, again, in the early stage of their development, have the potential, maybe not this year. And then beyond that, Tottenham is always going to be very difficult. It was all about Jose. And then, well, Leicester, if they can finish top 4, they'd be delighted.
Yeah, Steve. I mean, and Dave's preempted me there. I was going to say that we're quite sort of I wouldn't say biased, but we're up north in this panel. From the south, we've established Manchester United will be challengers. The Liverpool are favourites. City won't be going away. Spurs and Chelsea. I mean, are they realistic challengers this season?
Personally, I don't think so. No. I don't think I ever bought into Jose Mourinho's rhetoric that they were genuine title contenders when they were having that good run. I just don't see them as the type of force that Liverpool and Manchester City have been the last 2 or 3 years. And Chelsea, as Dave just alluded to, they're just a work in progress, aren't they, at the minute? So I don't think a serious title challenge will come from either of those two clubs, to be honest. Yeah. If I'm being honest, I think the challenge to Liverpool may come from Manchester. I don't know from which particular club. I think City are always capable of putting 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 game winning run together. But as Dave said again, it's Liverpool's to lose. And the frightening thing about Liverpool is that they look so strong at the minute. And this is without Van Dijk and Gomez. And everybody was saying, doomsday scenario, without VVD, they're never, ever going to be able to retain that title. But they have. They've shown kind of immense resilience in that way. And, young players have come in. Reece Williams came in the other day, was absolutely fantastic at centre half. They tried Phillips there, I think, as well earlier. He did okay. Curtis Jones coming on, he's done absolutely brilliantly. So there's a lot there for Liverpool to suggest that they're going to win their 20th title. Manchester United fans won't want to hear that, of course, because they've been crowing for quite a long time at 20 times, etc. But Liverpool look as though they could be in a title groove that might last 3-4 seasons.
Yeah, it's yes, I agree, and I think it's bizarre now when I think of it. That I have seen firsthand Liverpool lose 7-2 this season.
Yes,
watch them lose 7-2 to Aston Villa. With respect, I mean that's how freakish some of those results were. And I agree with you on Chelsea; they are a work in progress. I find as well, having we've all dealt with him for many years, but isn't it amazing how the intensity, the pressure? I mean, Frank Lampard's, it's in every interview after a game. The pressure is on him. When he was saying that, listen, when we're doing well, we're not as good as you say we are. And when we're doing badly, we're not as bad as you say we are. We're somewhere in between. But he's clearly feeling the pressure. But they keep throwing in the odd results, one of which I think was the defeat away at Wolves. And I was thinking of that because that was when Nuno was a bit happier than he was the other day when he said of Lee Mason, I just don't want to see him anymore. I hope he does not whistle a game of ours again. I think, as I say, I think he is. The FAR have asked him to explain his comments. I have to say, that always amuses me as well when they say, "Can you explain your comments?" Well, they don't need much explaining, do they? No. I hope he does not whistle a game of ours again. Well, I mean, how do you explain that one? But do you think it's Wolves have been a team? I think Wolves have got, I think they're 14 points from 14 games, which, the same as Arsenal. How, Simon, do you think, have Wolves hit some sort of plateau? Is Nuno losing his mojo?
Not necessarily. I mean, you can't expect relentless progress from a side that's recently got promoted and then surprised everyone by getting in the top 7 for a couple of years. I mean, there are going to be dips on the journey. They've sold Jota, who was clearly influential and is so at Liverpool as well. So you've got to just stick with it, and you might need to freshen it up and get new players in and rethink the system. Traore's not really been firing this year. So, but on the refereeing point, it's very interesting going to matches with no crowds and the frustration that you hear directly in the press box from managers and players. And a lot of managers are now a little bit despondent or a bit angry that it's becoming who can shout the loudest at the officials competition. It's become a shouting match on that touchline, and there's a lot of pressure being exerted on linesmen. and we hear it all.
Yeah.
And we've heard it in the past, and the intense pressure they're under. At Middlesbrough the other day, a goal was given when a penalty was double kicked. And it was only changed because the Middlesbrough players intensely surrounded a referee and had a shouting match with him. And the linesman crumbled and agreed with the Middlesbrough players, not the ref. He didn't flag and said, yeah, it shouldn't have been a goal. And it was only disallowed because of that shouting match. So that's becoming a big issue with managers and obviously Nuno as well, irrespective of VAR and getting decisions right.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that? So you mentioned that. What I found interesting is how sometimes the referees seem to be influenced by how loud a player, well, for want of a better word, squeals. Or when, and I'm surprised. I'm surprised at how they seem to be in so much pain. Obviously, it goes away fairly quickly. I mean, and I would have thought, for example, I mean, I don't know whether the referee who was, I can't remember who was refereeing on the West Brom Villa game. And there was a lot of shouting there when Jake Livermore went in on Jack Grealish. It was Martin Atkinson, wasn't it? It was Martin Atkinson. And you think then is the referee influenced by that? I just want to briefly talk about that, Steve. I want to talk about Sam Allardyce's first game. It did not go how he would have wanted.
No, it didn't, and Sam's got a big job on there because he quite clearly will want to protect this wonderful record he's got of never being relegated. But I have to say, it looks as though that might be in danger this time because West Brom don't look a particularly sort of strong side all round. He's obviously looked at that and think, because he does his analysis before he goes into these clubs. Him and Sammy Lee, I'm sure, will have looked at that and thought, yeah, there's elements of there that we can work on. And the thing about it, if you look at the table, West Brom aren't adrift. They're not cut adrift in the way that perhaps Sheffield United are with 2 points. I think West Brom have got 7 points at the moment. The next nearest team above them has got 10. So they're by no means cut adrift. And I think Sam will think that there's a real possibility there that he can get them out of trouble. I think where they're going to struggle is scoring goals. They've struggled for a long time in scoring goals, and we have seen that if you don't score goals, then you're unlikely to be able to survive. Which is why Sheffield United are in the position that they're in at the moment. But I think you can't dismiss Sam's experience of these situations. He's done it. He's done it at clubs like Crystal Palace, for instance. He took Everton, who obviously had probably much better players than West Brom did. He took them from the lower reaches of the Premier League, and when he left them, they were kind of quite comfortably just outside the top 6, 7. So he has got the capability to do that, but there aren't many managers like him, are there? Around. I can understand completely why West Brom have gone for him, because he's got the complete CV that would suggest he is the man to get you out of trouble. It'd be pointless bringing in a foreign manager, for instance, who's never managed here to do that job, because they would not have the know-how that Sam's got. So I think of all the managers, and West Brom fans probably would not have wanted Sam to take charge because of the connotation his name just brings completely. First of all, of Route 1 football, belligerent football, kind of don't get beat football. They probably wouldn't have wanted that, but if there's anybody that can get them out of trouble, then I would guess it would be him.
So I mean, I just think that I'm like Steve. I'm an admirer of Allardyce's. I just found it. I haven't seen West Brom. I saw West Brom go 3-up against Chelsea. They eventually drew that game. I saw them robbed of at least a point, maybe all 3, at Old Trafford when they were beaten 1-0, and terrible refereeing decisions in that game. And then, of course, we saw them get that point at the Etihad. And in every one of those games that I watched, I saw a team absolutely buying into their manager. So regardless of who replaced him, I just found it an odd decision to sack Bilic when they did.
Yeah, it is. I think the decision is another example of short-termism in football. I think Bilic had the potential, if you survive in your first year back in the Premier League, to build a club and move it on and get it playing decent football. I've seen West Brom play half-decent football this year. Then you appoint Sam Allardyce to get you through the next 7 months and keep you up. I don't know whether he's going to take them on and develop the club for 2 years after that. Maybe he thinks he can. But you do know, I mean, we've seen him at Sunderland dig a Sunderland side out of into a miracle escape, and he does embed a formula in there, and he'll want 2 or 3 signings which will have to work in January, which he'll stick in, which he had at Sunderland, and he has got a formula that kind of works. And you wonder, he's been out the game for a little bit, whether that formula still works. He'll back himself 100%. And part of Sam Allardyce's strength is that his Steve mentioned the word belligerence. It is belligerence. He will. You don't want to be a Sam Allardyce player and not follow him. You know, you wouldn't. You follow him. You do your job, and if he tells you to do that, it's a job. You do it. And you know what works. So yeah, it's kind of short-termism at a back village to build the club a bit more long-term and have it playing better football. But Sam,
I think it just shows you as well, Dunny, the nervousness that owners have got around the potential of dropping out of this division. Yeah. It is a frightening thought for a lot of owners, and maybe that's why we're seeing West Brom pulling the trigger on Slaven Bilic. Yes. Way before Christmas, way before really it's a desperate situation. I don't think it is at the moment, but they're clearly not taking any chances. They know the revenue stream that comes from being in the Premier League, and you know, while it was kind of greeted with a lot of kind of dismay by a lot of fans and pundits and commentators, you can absolutely see why these owners do make these decisions, because the numbers now in the Premier League are just stratospheric, aren't they?
Yes, they are. But I'll go back to, you know, and Dave, I wonder if you could come in on this. I just, you know, I go back to the idea. I mean, is it really? Steve said it's a nightmare scenario. You know, is it really? I mean, Norwich are top of the league, Bournemouth are second in the Championship. Is it that much of a nightmare scenario? You know, listen, Norwich didn't sack their manager last season, and he's bringing them back up. Burnley didn't sack Sean Dyche that time. They went down, and he brought them back up. Yeah,
I think it depends on the owner's philosophy, and I think the situation West Brom is it the Chinese owner perhaps looking to sell. So obviously, if you're trying to sell a club, it's better if it's in the Premier League than the Championship. But you make a very good point about Norwich. As you say, they stuck with Daniel Farke. They'll probably come up this season. They'll probably get relegated. They'll fall to the yo-yo club. Sean Dyche, as you say, was a classic example as well. You know, in fact, you could even bring Sheffield United into the mix, because the Prince of does come out and basically says, look, Chris Wilder will be our manager even if we get down, because they know that if they get relegated, the best person to get Sheffield United promoted next season will be Chris Wilder. Nobody knows that club. Nobody knows that squad better. So there is something to be said for that. I think you're right. There's something to be said for clinging on, existing in the Premier League, sort of eking out sort of 35, 36 points and saying, oh, do you remember that great 1-1 draw we got at Newcastle or something out there? As opposed to a season in the Championship where you just steamroller every team in front of you. And like, you know, Steve, you'll only have to speak to United fans. In respect them, some of them will say their greatest ever season was 74-75 when they won promotion back to the top flight. They loved it. They loved going to Blackpool and winning and stuff. So there is something to be said now, but I think in terms of the West Brom example, it's just a case that I think their owner says, look, we cannot afford to get relegated because we want to sell this club, and it's obviously going to be worth a lot more as a Premier League going concern as it is as a Championship team with all that there, really. So up to each individual owner, I suppose.
Interesting that, Simon, isn't it? You know, I guess we all know areas like that and clubs like that where, you know, promotion seasons are memorable. I'm sure it's the same on in the Northeast, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, the two promotions most recently after relegated, the Rafa promotion, when Rafa stayed, having been Real Madrid manager 3 months before, went down with them, but brought them straight back up. And that is there's a film just come out on Amazon about it. So they still look, you know, in 1992 promotion under Keegan, when they bounced back there, the streets were lined like they'd won, you know, the European Cup. It was so joyful, you know. There can be great times to be had in the Championship, and the Norwich point is an interesting one. How West Brom have gone short term, but you know, Norwich have clearly got a proper long term plan. I covered them early in the season against Huddersfield, and you just sensed it. And we were sitting right amongst the directors. Delia was there, sporting director was there. Daniel Farke hadn't got the sack. After the game, they were all on the pitch together talking, pulling a player in when they were doing the warm-up, having a chat. This is Delia and the sporting director and Farke. And it seemed a proper United club. They sold 2 or 3 of their assets. As long as you can do that to plug the 60 million gap that you lose from falling out, as long as you've built an asset in the Premier League, then you can bounce back and have a good time. You know, we all want our club to have that kind of stability and that kind of long-term plan, even if they have the odd failure on the way.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what it's all about, and the teams at the start of the season say, we just got to, the bottom line is enough points to stay up, and this is how much the TV contract's worth. And let's face it, they get the TV money and they give it all to players on exorbitant contracts. Let's stay in this league so we can actually pay more money to more players and give players 350 grand a week not to play. I find it just a bit, in this time, I'd like there to be a bit more idealism like we've been talking about today. But talking about relegation, I was going to say, David, you did bring up that good point about what the Sheffield United owners were saying, but did it almost, in a way, that's almost accepting a fate, so I mean, do you think, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to ask all of you, all three of you, it's not, we're obviously not yet nowhere close to being halfway through the season, but who are the three clubs, David, first of all, you think are going to be relegated or in the gravest danger of being relegated?
Well, at Sheffield United, we've been asking Chris Wilder a lot about season 1990. Dave Batts' first season, they got promoted. Season 1991, and they had not won a game just before Christmas. They beat Forest, and they then went on this crazy run of winning 7 of the next 10 or something, and actually stayed up comfortably mid-table. And we keep saying, can another Christmas miracle happen? And the answer is, I don't think so. Right. Because Sheffield United deal up the two things you need to be good at as a football team are scoring goals and keeping them out, and they can't do either at the minute. Despite everything, the work ethic, the commitment, the team spirit, everything else you cannot fault. But if you can't it's almost a case of, it's like me, can I play for Liverpool? No, I'm not good enough. And it's almost like Sheffield just aren't good enough for the Premier League at the minute. So I fancy they will go down. I think Fulham, I'm still not convinced by them. And this might be an escape back too far for Big Sam and West Brom.
Sheffield United, Fulham, West Brom. I will go. It's Christopher, by the way, who's watching this, who's asking this question about which three teams we think will go down. So you've gone Sheffield, Fulham, West Brom. I think Sheffield, West Brom, I'd agree with. I like Fulham. I think Fulham have got goals in them, and I think Fulham will get a few results. Will surprise people. I fear for Burnley. I really do. So I'll go Sheffield, Fulham, Burnley.
Oh, Burnley will be fine.
Well, they're fine, mate. Yeah, that's
12 points. Picking up 12 points for the last 7 games. They'll be fine.
Steve?
I mean, Sheffield United, I think they are doomed. I think after that, I would probably, again, I would worry about Fulham. I think Sam will get West Brom out of trouble. I really believe he will do that because they're not cut adrift, as I said. So I'm going to go Sheffield United. I'll go Fulham as well. And do you know what? I think there's going to be a team that will drop into it from outside and probably the one team for me that might struggle this season is Brighton. And I'm going to go Brighton to go down.
Simon?
Well, I agree. Sheffield United. I don't think Sam Allardyce will keep West Brom up. I saw Fulham last week, and they were really impressive against Newcastle. Anguissa and Lamina in the middle of the park ran the show. They're scoring goals, so I think that they've got 13 goals this year. So I think they might get out of it. Bit worried about Brighton. Are they a bit flimsy? But I think having covered Burnley a few times and Sean Dyche being a little bit unhappy about the amount of money that he's had in the summer and a bit of discord going on there and takeover brewing. I think the instability at Burnley might just trip them up. And the main thing is they're the lowest scorers in the league. They've only scored 8 goals this year. So I think this could be a bad year for Burnley to slip into the third bottom.
Dave's not having that.
No, that'll be fine. The takeover will happen. There'll be money to spend. Barnes scored his first goal in 13 months. That'll be fine.
I think we can all. I think we can all say that it's not sounding great news for Sheffield United. So,
no.
And quickly as we approach the festive period, at the other end of the table, are we? I'm going Liverpool's champions. Anyone else? Is there anyone different from that, Simon?
No, not at all. Liverpool will win, but they'll like you said, only 90-odd points this year. Only 92 points.
Yeah. David?
Yeah, definitely Liverpool. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's a high 80s, low 90s points. Like they will lose games. In fact, they might even lose at Anfield this season, a league game for the first time since April 2017. That could happen.
Is that when it is? Who wants to beat them then? I can't remember.
Big Sam and Crystal Palace.
Of course, yeah.
And Big Sam is back on Sunday evening with West Brom. So there you are. There's a story that could be written in the stars.
Yeah, well, it could be written in the stars, mate. That would be a Christmas miracle. Let's put it that way. Steve, can you see any further than Liverpool?
I can't, Dunny. No, not at the moment. I mean, I think Manchester United have the capability. They've certainly got the players and they've got the squad. There's no doubt about that, and they've got the forward line to do it. But I just think there's that kind of question mark about their inconsistency at the moment that would be holding them back. As I've mentioned, City, I think, are always capable of mounting a challenge, but I think there's just City aren't right at the minute, and I think, you know, until they get that strike force sorted out and start scoring more goals, then I don't think they're missing David Silva as well. City, they're missing Sergio Aguero's goals and when he was in his peak. So yeah, for me, I think Liverpool have got it sewn up. But listen, as you just mentioned, we're not even kind of halfway through yet. So you know, there's a lot of twists and turns, and you know, I believe that at this moment Liverpool do look the best bet. But I think, you know, we're in a season where we've said it before. This could be another 2016 when Leicester win it and somebody else comes out the pack.
Yeah, well, Leicester, of course, got a big game on Boxing Day. It's a game that I'll be at on Boxing Day. Leicester are home to Manchester United. Guys, festive football, you know, normally we always have a manager or two moaning about the fixture schedule, but it's great, isn't it? I mean, David, do you enjoy the football over the holiday season, or would you rather see them have a break?
Well, yeah, again, as you said, this hypocritical element within us journalists, in that some respects we all moan about, oh yeah, it's just too hard for them, they should get proper breaks. And you think, well, as journalists, what fills a paper better than live matches every other day, really? You know, paper takes care of itself. But it is, and the people, especially this time more than any year, where basically, you know, we're all stuck at home, we're all feeling a bit sorry for ourselves. It's been a miserable year. And I know it's a cliche, but it is wonderful to be able to turn to live football, and one of the few live things that is actually happening, because even the telly's rubbish. They haven't been able to make the Christmas specials and all that. You're watching repeats of films, and every night you can watch a live Premier League game of some top team somewhere. And as you say, this season more than any, because there's that leveling down and sort of leveling up from below, there's actually great quality, you know, in a lot of the games, and there's going to be some absolute crackers. And you're right, I think the Christmas football will be one of the highlights of the festive period, really.
Simon, it's good, isn't it? It's good stuff to have all these fixtures and then to have the FA Cup third round soon after.
Yeah, it's great. Pack them in. These teams have all got 25-man squads, so why don't you use them? I mean, if you've got 10 men you don't want to use, don't employ them. You know, I tell you what, I do this year in the coronavirus era with nobody going out is the stories of the players' Christmas party and you know, parents accused swing bridge in Newcastle and all that kind of stuff, and the arrests and carnage that happens there. And we're not going to see that this year, which is usually the list our spirits.
I remember, Simon. I don't know why it's just coming to me, but the other thing I was going to say about Christmas, do you remember when the players' news always used to come out of what they got each other for Secret Santa?
Yeah.
And didn't someone get Pistoni something bizarre?
Sheep's heart.
Sheep's heart, that's right.
Yeah.
Did we ever find out who gave him that Secret Santa?
Well, I think the senior players in the dressing room at that time, Alex, Warren Barton, that kind of thing, probably might have been behind that.
I remember that. It just comes to me suddenly that I remember. Steve, yeah. So Christmas parties. I remember. Do you remember, Steve, up here in the Northwest? I mean, the Liverpool players' party used to be legendary, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Back in the day, it did. Yeah, I mean,
yes.
Certainly they couldn't.
It was fancy dress, wasn't it? If I remember rightly.
Yeah, fancy dress, and you know, a lot of the clubs have opted for fancy dress the last few years. I remember in my village where I live, a few footballers live around this way, Manchester footballers, and I remember going into the village for, I think I was going to get a pint of milk, and I bumped into the Manchester City squad going into a restaurant, and they were dressed as kind of superheroes, chickens, all kinds of things. So it was quite bizarre. It was quite bizarre, really, and I think it's a great tradition that we should encourage.
But that's perfect, though, isn't it? When they're dressed as superheroes, as long as they're wearing the helmet, the hat, you can't tell who's behind the Buzz Lightyear who's misbehaving in the restaurant. So they get away with murder when they're dressed up as superheroes.
Exactly.
Hey, David, it's almost unthinkable now, isn't it?
What?
A Christmas party.
I know the thought of going out, Johnny, actually, and having a drink or sitting in a bar, not having to scan something and show proof of an identity to show that you're all from the same family bubble and you're not interlopers. It is absolute bonkers, really. But It will slowly get back to normal, really. Although
I was talking to we had a Zoom call with Jurgen Klopp sort of a week, 10 days ago, and I asked him if, obviously they couldn't be having a Christmas party this year, and I alluded to the legendary Liverpool parties of the past where they get dressed up, and I said, will you not be having just maybe a Christmas meal between you all at the training ground? And he even said that wouldn't be possible because of the strict COVID rules now that are in place at the training grounds where you have to socially distance, and they just didn't feel it'd be worthwhile having, a Christmas turkey lunch even in their own bio bubble. So that shows you how this whole pandemic has just decimated everything.
What a shame. I suspect, as we know probably, because when he came to one of our functions last year, I suspect Klopp would be good value on any Christmas party, wouldn't he? Anyway, guys, thanks for that. Hopefully this time next year, even the players will be having a Christmas party. We'll all be having one. Hopefully this year the football will go ahead and just cheer a few people up anyway. So guys, thanks again for today. Enjoy the games wherever you're going. Thanks everyone for watching. And I think we'll be back next week. Thank you, bye all.
Bye-bye.